Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to see all of you here for our third panel of the day about sports marketing, a rising trend which we also covered in numerous news articles and even in one of our previous quarterly reports. I'm going to hand over the microphone to Adil, as it seems it won't do much. Your microphone is not working?
Testing, yeah.
It's working. No problem. So I'm going to hand over the microphone to Adil Siddiqui.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for joining us. This is the last panel of the day, and we've got a great team here of experts in their own field to share with us on sports marketing.
Last panel, but there's still a lot more.
There's still a lot more.
Don't use the word last.
Last but not least. All right. We have a Twitter hashtag, London Summit 15. There's also an interesting fact I'm going to tell you about all the panelists here. Two of the people here share the same birth date. If you can tweet the answer, you'll get a special prize at the end. I'll give you a hint. One of them is healthy, and one of them isn't. So that's as far as I'll go. So let's get started.
That's a bit harsh on me. I frown upon that.
Yeah. We'll start off with the introductions. I'll let everybody introduce themselves. Tal.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Tal Ron. Thank you, Adil. Thank you, Erez, and the guys from Finance Magnates, everybody. Again, the final panel of today, last but not least, the awards are coming after. I'm Tal Ron. I'm a lawyer based in Tel Aviv from Tal Ron, Driem & Co. We do lots of financial law, and we take care of many of these affairs with the clients, including the contracts with sponsorship, and we'll speak about this here today. Thank you.
I'm Lee Goldwater. I work for a company called Magnates Sports. So we're a sports rights holder and a consultant to brands that want to leverage the power of sports.
Hello, I'm Jan de Schepper. I'm head of marketing of Swissquote. I'm based in Geneva.
And we're very fortunate, as you know, to have two sports professionals with us. So I'll introduce Ryan. He's a current football player with the Premiership team down south, Southampton. He's been a champion with a Premiership club, Chelsea, and he's on his day off. He's given us his time to share with us his thoughts on sports sponsorship. Alongside him is the great Mr. Tyndall, rugby champion 2003, and what more to say about him? He's a great asset to have.
The less the better is normally the way forward. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, let's get started. How was the World Cup, Mike? Were you happy with the team?
What a way to start. I'll keep the answer short. I'll keep the answer short. No, I wasn't happy with the team. In terms of the World Cup, it was outstanding. I think it's been widely reported. Most successful World Cup on and off the field. I think the brand of rugby that was played on it, especially by the lower tiers, you think of Japan, think of Georgia, even Romania. These guys who have been the whipping dogs of rugby for so long actually came and stood up and made people take notice. There's calls now that the Tier 1 teams have to go and play these countries to give them more exposure. I think you look at then the big teams and what they produced in the quarterfinals, semi-finals and finals, it was just outstanding rugby. To see St James's Park, it was always a sort of question mark whether the football grounds would take. I got the phone call, could I please go watch Uruguay versus England at Etihad? And I've gone, oh my God, there's going to be no one there. Full house. Atmosphere was brilliant, and I think that's what England and the UK do well, is they put on tournaments well, and I think we should get more in the future, because you look at the success of the Olympics in 2012, you look at the success of the Rugby World Cup, and as soon as we sort out FIFA that everything's done fair and clean and fairly, we might have a chance with the Football World Cup. So all in all, I think that the event was a massive success, and hopefully it's going to bring in more money, more from different areas in business that are actually going to want to get involved in rugby and sort of help push it on to another level as well.
And what do you think was missing with England this year?
They picked the wrong squad. The team that goes out and plays France and puts 55 points on France, how does that team not start the first game of the World Cup? It's simple. You've got your winning formula right there, and they didn't change. They changed a lot of it, and we talked about it in terms of British sport. It always seems to be when the pressure comes on, we don't panic, but we change our beliefs, or we'll change our philosophies because we worry about the consequences. Rather than, if you look at Argentina, they go and play every game like it's their last. It's full of passion. It's full of willingness to just, if they're going down in flames. And as fans, which I am now, all you can ask for is your team goes down in flames. They stick to what they believe in, and they play it with their heart, and they play it with passion. And if they do that and they lose, you can walk away and you can cope with it. There's nothing worse than walking away from a game going, they didn't really try anything. They didn't do that. And that's unfortunately how all England fans had to leave stadiums at Twickenham.
Perfect. So we'll stick to the topic now. Jan, you guys are a sponsor of one of the largest and most well-known football clubs. Why did you engage in that, moving away from a sport that you were in, Formula One, before?
Yes, it's a good question. Actually, it started with the objectives that we had. So we made an analysis and said, okay, our objective is to gain awareness and consideration of a brand, especially in the Middle East and in Asia. And then we made an evolution. Okay, first of all, is it advertising or is it sponsorship? Then the second question was then, okay, yes, it is sponsorship because it has the benefits. What's the right sponsorship? Is it music, art, sport? It was clear it is sport. And then we go really into the details about comparing the pros and the cons of Formula One and football. Also having a look at other sports. And we came to the conclusion after this careful evaluation process that yes, it is football, and if football, then Premier League, and then at the end, the last question is which club, and then we took the decision to go for the club, you know.
And how do you go in? Do you fix a budget before when you enter into this, or are you just going to see what proposals come forward for you?
Actually, we had already a reference because of the history that we have with Formula One. That was a little bit our reference. And then we see, okay, what can we achieve in the same frame budget reference? And that was actually the basis of comparison and our starting point.
And what did you like about the way this particular club, we won't name them, pitched to you by maybe sending some shirts with the owners' names on the back? And I feel some of our audience probably got those as well, because I've got two.
Yeah, at the end, it is the objective, rational side, but also the emotional side. So it's clear that the emotional plays an important role, the determination of the club, of really wanting to have this particular partner. And we felt that, yes, as they wanted to have us, we felt that there is a team in place that can provide us assistance, so that helps us defining the right strategy, the right activities, so to be successful in the long term. And that, I think, was the element which...
So now you and the rest of the Swissco are die-hard Man City fans, is it? I mean, sorry, Man United fans. Yeah. Lee, tell us a little bit about sports sponsorship, probably adding to what Jan said, why financial FX companies are entering it.
Well, I think the one thing about sports, or one of the things about sports is it transcends geography, and I think that's a major factor here. So there's a universal appeal, and I always think if you go on holiday, you know, the different cultures, they eat different food, they listen to different music, they dance differently. You know, there's lots of differences, but when it comes to sport, there's kind of an alignment, and I think, you know, for you know, an online business, for digital businesses where there aren't geographical boundaries, you know, there aren't bricks and mortar stores. It's not about targeting a local demographic. It's about targeting a multi-market world. Then I think sports allows you to engage on that level. I think that's a major point. I think the other part to it is particularly in this industry, and I think there's probably similar characteristics to this industry and you know, the betting industry, in that you're asking people to deposit funds with your business, and then you are eventually allowing them to withdraw funds, and there has to be a large degree of trust. And I think you know, sports teams have had, you know, they have history, years and years of history of building up trust, building up a brand with consumers, and when you partner with a team, there is that transfer of brand equity. And I think that's a key factor. So by partnering with you know, a sports organisation, you can kind of assume a degree of trust at a consumer level. And I think that's a major part of why sports sponsorship is appealing.
An FX firm has sort of jumped onto this bandwagon in the last few years. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think trust is a main one. They want to they want to get trust, and they want to get trust quickly, and they want to get awareness quickly. And sports allows you to do that as long as you invest in the right sport. And I think being part of a kind of a shared passion point allows you to kind of connect on an emotional level with fans across the world. So I think there's probably a desire to grow businesses quickly, differentiate yourself in the market, build trust, and do it on an international level. And I think, few platforms probably offer as strong an appeal as sports.
Yeah. And Jan, you guys have spent money now on the football. Do you do anything else apart from football and F1? I think you had, or previously.
So now it's really concentrated on football. So you cannot do everything. So we have the philosophy: it's better to focus on one bet and then doing excellence in execution. That must be the objective. Every campaign we do, track it, getting better for the next one. And yes, it's difficult if you have too many sponsored platforms to maintain.
And financial services companies like the banks, I think they've been heavily into certain sports. So F1 has been them, and rugby, I think RBS has been them. Mike, what do you feel about the demographic of the rugby fan? How is sort of that different, and maybe how can firms in this space take advantage of that?
Well, I think, as a sport, rugby generally is from an affluent background. I think in history, it's come from private schools. It's all older sort of money. It's why Twickenham was always full of Range Rovers and that sort of picnic out the back of it. Very similar to racing in some respects. And I think with, as Lee was saying, with them getting involved in sports, it's an immediate way of getting to a new market, a new brand of people. I think with the technology side of it that FX has now brought with the mobile apps and getting it mobile, making it social, it makes it a lot easier to bring in the younger sort of people and people who are more mobile and tech savvy, I think. And for me personally, when I always liked the idea of trading, I had a lot of friends who finished rugby and ended up in the city, but it was always not a hassle, but I didn't want to go to the bank, or I didn't want to go find someone who would do my trades for me. And I think now with those mobile apps and with that ability, you can take that power in your sort of within yourself and get out there and do it. And when you're promoting a sports team, you are immediately, if there's 80,000 people watching you, you're projecting that straight away to a whole new brand of people. You take the Rugby World Cup, there are hundreds of millions that were watching. If you're involved as a sponsorship around there, suddenly your potential market is just open massively.
Is there any other sports, Lee, that sort of clients and companies come to you for, apart from sort of your core football, F1, rugby?
Yeah, we have a significant business in golf and tennis, and then other kind of mass participation sports like triathlon. So we've got a lot of different sports, and I think it's always interesting when clients come to us and they're interested in leveraging the power of sport, but they don't quite know how to do it. And I think not all sports are right for. Not one sport isn't right for all brands. I think depending on what their objectives are and what they want to achieve, it's important to understand what sports will best deliver that. I think that's a question of demographics. It's a question of market. It's a question of frequency at events. It's a question of the resource that you've got to put on an activation. I think all these questions come into the fore on how you choose a sport. So we do lots of different things. And also, we also help brands to get involved in sports where we don't own anything, and I think that's important. So it's the key question for anyone is not what sports are you involved with, or we'll try and sell you that. It's what's going to be right against your set of objectives that you've laid out.
And Tal, if you've taken the sponsorship, so you're an FX club, you've gone with a sports team or event. What do you think you can make sure when you're doing the due diligence and the terms and conditions to make sure 6 months, 12 months down the line you're not disappointed? How can you protect yourself in that respect?
Well, that's a good question. The $1 million question, the $2 million, it depends on which we're representing here. And we are lucky enough to have involved in few of these deals. My firm is also the legal advisor of UFX, where Mike Tyndall is one of the presenters, and also FX Primus, who sponsors Man United, Man City. and they're now like heading
You
the.
just done a breach of contract there, you know.
No, there is no confidence. I have here also Shai from Airsoft, where and they didn't take a sponsorship yet, but it looks to me that these kind of situations, if as a club and a forex broker, you get with the same amount of seriousness to the table, both parties can have significant gains. And I will explain what I see. If we take FX Primus as a case study, their slogan is the safest way to trade, okay? And they invested in Man City, let's say between $1 and $2 million each season. And for a club like Man City, they don't need this money. This $1 or $2 million for them is peanuts. But sometimes, in my view, as a lawyer, sometimes I believe that sometimes these clubs can enjoy to be assimilated with a successful FX brokerage, and it can be win-win for both ways. So it's not only that UFX are enjoying Mike Tyndall or Man City enjoying the other guys, but it can be the other ways. Now,
I was going to say UFX always enjoy me.
But Tal, just to so is there been any of the, without naming names now, please, has there been any clients that you worked on where you maybe have advised the broker,
yes,
we need to tighten up the contract and stuff?
Okay, what the advice should be like that. First of all, there is a clause which is called the termination clause. Now, normally, a termination clause, it can be like for 2 seasons, a year, and then an option to get another year, which is very, very common in this industry. What I do suggest is to have not only termination, it should have like 2 types of termination, and normally it should have also a termination for cause and for convenience. It means that sometimes if one of the parties have a default, and let's say what happened like with 888, where they took Luis Suarez, who gave a biting or something like that, and then 888 just dropped him because of the harm of the reputation. Or another situation what happened with the CWM, with Chelsea, and all of these sponsorship did backfire. So what my suggestion is to make sure that all these termination sections will be drafted well, so either party can terminate or end this agreement. And also, it's not really easy to have it inside, but sometimes a very good indemnification sections and can be implemented in the contract to make sure that if there is consequential damages to the reputation of either parties, it can be covered. It's not easy because both parties are normally governed by lawyers. Sometimes they're UK lawyers, sometimes US lawyers, and not really easy to negotiate, but that's a good, important thing to get inside.
Perfect. So leveraging off that point, Lee and then Jan, and if the other gentlemen want to add, is that how do you best activate a sponsorship? Is there any examples maybe you can give from either other industries as well?
When it comes to activation, I think, well, I guess it's the same starting point as acquiring a sponsorship. You need to understand and have a kind of line of sight into exactly what the principles of success are going to be here. Once you get to the end of the partnership, how are you going to measure what you've achieved and what's going to be considered a successful partnership? So there's never a one-size-fits-all approach on activation, and it really depends. It depends what channels you want to leverage. Do you want to create content to grow your social media database and social media community? Do you want to, are you trying to acquire subscriptions for the website? You're trying to acquire customers? Is it about customer retention? Is it about building a brand? Is it about communicating certain values? And there are a host of different ways to do that. I think, in terms of best practice on activation, once you set out those objectives and then you understand on the other side what rights you have, it's about deploying those rights in a certain way. I think there needs to be a commitment from a brand level.
Is there any examples maybe you can give us? I know you've got confidentiality agreements,
yeah.
But anything that's in the public domain.
Well, I was talking today actually about Heineken do their Champions League sponsorship very well. So one of their objectives, and I use this because they're a client of ours, so one of their objectives was to kind of try and dominate the social buzz around Champions League games. And so, you know, the solution was to take ex-Champions League players who were available during games. Obviously, you know, the current players are involved in games. And they would take over Heineken's Twitter feed for the match. So fans could ask them questions and engage with them directly during games. And, you know, just from that activity, they absolutely dominated the social traffic for Champions League games versus other partners. And that was a really good activation, right? That's what they wanted to achieve. But there's genuinely so many different ways to activate. And I think it's important to understand exactly what you want to achieve and then to deploy the assets in the right way to achieve it.
Perfect. And Ryan, sort of from your experience on the receiving end, where the clubs that you've been with, they've got various sponsors. Has there been any instances where companies have come and you've seen something good or interesting in a way that they've marketed their product?
I think for me, individually, I've seen a vast amount of various different marketing campaigns and stuff. And I think props to UFX and Mike. I think you have utilised it in a very, very positive manner. And I see that as a progressing trend. Not only are we seeing a growing trend of individual brokers aligning with football teams, but I see the future trend moving towards more so the individual. And I see that a very underutilised aspect of it, as in if you do your a little bit of research, the average individual that's part of a football team can often command a far greater reach via social media than the club itself. So for me, I think it's been seriously underutilised, and I think, you know, Mike is testament for that at the moment.
It's very difficult, isn't it, for a brand of a sporting body and someone who's coming in and to invest in it to create a partnership that works for both, especially if you're an FX. How do you then get that to work with a team? Whereas with an individual, you can probably bespoke it a lot better in terms of what benefits both UFX and myself. Whereas if it was a team, you've got to then somehow get that whole message throughout your whole squad, throughout your whole structure, which sometimes can be hard to do. There are products and there are companies that do that, and they do it very well. But it requires a lot more planning and a lot more sort of diligence to actually find that and work with it together. I think that's sometimes where you'll find with sport, occasionally you get people who drop in and out of sponsoring stuff because maybe the partnership hasn't quite there, and a lot of it's down to the club to overwork, because these guys are putting money in, and it's so easy to go, well, the money's through the door, and the club just goes, well, we've got it now anyway. But it's about building something that goes long term. If you want to have a successful club and you want to actually build it on the right ethics of what you're doing, it's about creating that partnership. You want long term. Football is all, you look at football in general, it is short term. Players' contracts can be short term. They move on so fast. Managers, who want to be a manager in football? You're the best thing one week, you're not the next, aren't you? That's the thing, is creating those long-term sponsorship packages that suit the whole thing as a team.
Maybe Ryan can tell us about his ex-manager, where he's heading next. Maybe not. Jan, you maybe want to add something. Maybe you want to add something to this.
I think what is important about the activation is that it's really well orchestrated, so it's really multi-channel, so that it's using the own media that you have, business card, the emails, the website, the building, the launchers, then the paid media, being clear how many you can invest in the paid media before that you enter the negotiation, because it's a critical point, and then also working with media, PR amplification, and then using the players, not just the club. So if the players then share the content, then it gets even bigger reach. So it's really about orchestration. It has to be well planned through. But for that, you need, first of all, know your objectives, and you have to have put in place a creative team, a concept, so that you can easily activate it. I think that's key.
And I'd say that knowing your objectives before, or knowing your plans for activation before you even negotiate the rights in the sponsorship can help a lot. So typically, brands will take a sponsorship and then they will say, right, these are our rights, we need to activate it. Whereas in reality, the best practice is to understand exactly how you want to activate a sponsorship. And when you go to the negotiating table with the rights holder, you can tailor and customize a package around what your plans. Because the worst thing in sponsorship is to get halfway down the line, have a really good idea for international activation through the channel, and then not have the rights to deliver that. And then you have to go back to the negotiating table and pay the club even more money, or the rights holder even more money, to acquire those rights to help you to achieve that plan.
But a point on what you touched on earlier, Mike, where you talked about short-term in some sports. How does a fan then, if it's an individual or a club, relate to you? How can he's loyal to the club. His father took him to the game or whatever. Then you've come on the scene for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year deal. Why should they relate to you as a club or an individual?
Well, the beauty of a fan is once you're in that organisation, they do relate to you. They might not actually know you, but they end up, they'll always follow you and follow what you're doing, and don't know why, what it is. Your club is your constant body, but your players are your stars, as it were, and they come in, so they want to follow their stars, and that's why I was going to jump in on the point when you sponsor a club. You have to get the club is its duty to get the players on board, because I don't know what Ryan thinks, but I remember being involved at England, and you knew England had all these sponsorship partners, but you didn't know anyone at them. So I didn't know who was running Lucasade, who'd be running Land Rover, who'd be doing, well, it's BMW now, but who'd be doing O2. So you didn't have that connection when you met them. So when you're asked to then go and do an O2 day for England, you're like, well, I don't really want to do it, really. There's nothing really in it for me. I'm not invested in it in any way. I know that England Rugby are getting what they want out of it, but I'm not getting. So you turn up, you do literally the limited list of what you want to do, and you go home. But that feeds that back poorly to said sponsor. Whereas when it is individual, you look at, I'm going to just talk about UFX because that's what I do. Yeah, with UFX, what I want to get out of our partnership is, I was always interested in the sort of trading starts, but I need to understand more. So I wanted lessons, and I got lessons. Yeah. But as part of a social media campaign, and that was what I wanted out of it. And I could give them what they want because it goes through social media, and you could grow it that way. And that's sort of a partnership. And people do it well at clubs. They do. I've been in it where when I was at Bath, rugby was a lot smaller then, but we had a partnership with loads of companies that were actually locally based, and you could get in and they helped the players further down the line. If they were retiring, players had spent time with them and got invested in what they did, and maybe go off and work for them post-career. It's something that we've all got to deal with at some point. Your knees are going to pack in or whatever. Hopefully not. Right, you'll be all right, pal. But that's from a player's point of view. That's what you're looking long term. Is you've got to think, what am I going to do afterwards, and find that out. And that's why I'm sort of in awe of him. He's going out there setting up his own brokerage firm, and he's going to find his own way that way.
Yeah, perfect. Let's talk about the brokerage that you're launching, Ryan. So it's called Silicon Markets. Can you just give us a bit of background, why, how the concepts come up?
Yeah, I think for me, personally, my kind of venture into the financial world, albeit it started when I was very young. My mum worked at Morgan Stanley, so I used to take frequent trips there as a youth. So, it actually stayed with me, and I gravitated towards the industry, wanted to find out more. And it never left my side. So I started trading, had a small portfolio, turned 18 and stuff, so, a naive portfolio, may I add. And, I have a few fantastic co-founders and stuff that I've managed to progress towards, and we spotted a kind of niche within the industry, I think. So our whole aim was to be very innovative, and it's okay. There's a lot of brokers coming out nowadays saying we're the leaders in innovation and stuff. But we really do believe we have found something, and that's why we want to introduce a whole new brand of trading tools, absolutely free, and give the kind of augment the retail traders' trading experience, and provide good value for them. And Silicon Markets is something that we're trying to do, and hopefully it'll go well.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck to you on that. And how did you find time when you probably had a busy training schedule? If I read or remember correctly, were you at Midlands Club when you were young? That's where you.
No. I was.
So I read that.
I was born and raised in southeast London, which in Rotherhithe. I don't know if you know, It's literally a stone's
Right
throw.
tunnel, we know, probably.
So it's a stone's throw from the Isle of Dogs and Canada one, and where it's all based. So that's why I reiterate it was like a natural gravitation. And the way football's gone nowadays, with the heaps of money involved and stuff, kind of sport and finance has gone hand in hand. And I don't want to put kind of a downer on it, but the trading side of things is from perhaps a sports person or perspective has been a little bit tarnished over the years. A few people have come and gone and said, a few fake promises have been done. So hopefully I can, re-establish and be like an honest beacon of, of trust back within the industry.
So what will a sports person, wealthy sports person, I'll add, be looking for when they're investing? And why are they coming to trading then? Why not maybe something like property investment, private equity?
I think, people that are educated within, trading or asset management, it's natural to have, you should have a diverse portfolio. You shouldn't just go, leaps and bounds into the FX market if you're serious about protecting your capital. But, I think it's something nowadays where we shared the point earlier about footballers and rugby players having a slightly different demographic. The footballer slightly less educated, in some sense, most sense, to be honest.
Not really politically correct.
Thank you.
And so it absolutely astounds me how you can get nowadays you can get a 17-year-old sign a £1 million contract, and he hasn't received the full training or any aspect of how to manage that money. So that's something, perhaps, we need another hour or so for me to go into that, but that's another area that I'd like to tackle. Perhaps, providing a money management scheme within the...
Are there going to be free classes? So maybe Mike, he likes free classes from UFX, he can join them.
Nothing better than free, pal. Nothing better than free.
We've got free beer after, if you guys want to stay. Jan... sorry, I've lost my thought. I have totally lost my thought. Do you want to come in with something, Jan? Any comments?
Please, that's Jan, please help. Yeah, please. I think that's a very valid point in terms of, one thing that sports players do is ultimately their career is short. You have a chance. Obviously, rugby's not quite where football. Well, it's not anywhere near where football is. But you have guys who have a certain a 10, 12, 15-year max if you're lucky in sport nowadays. With the so easy how you can pick up niggles that'll end your career. So it is crucial that young guys, whoever coming into sport, we're only lucky at the moment in rugby in the terms of we don't have academies to the sake. There's a standard of picking people up at 12, 13, 14. That's going to come at some point in rugby. We were not naive enough to not know that the more the game grows, it is going to go that way. We're now bringing people in at 15, whereas when I turned professional, it was guaranteed that you do your A-levels. You do your A-levels, you might even go to do uni whilst you played. Whereas now we are into the first generation of people being 15, leaving school at 15 and coming into academies. Now, we're set up, we've learnt, not from football's mistake, but we've learnt from what history has shown us in the fact that we do still try and make our academies, they're all doing A-levels, they all go off to school and they're doing it dually. But at the end of the day, if you can suddenly turn 21 in rugby, and I know it's small terms of football, but you're suddenly earning 150, 200 grand a year, which didn't happen when I was there. I think 10 grand was my first paycheck for the first year I played rugby. So it is about having them the outlet and the education to then go and do stuff with their money. And it is what Ryan's saying there is vital in having someone who footballers, sports people trust is the main thing. That's the biggest thing. Because we don't know much about it, you've got to have someone who you believe in and who you can trust and who you can turn to actually have confidence to go, look, I'm going to cut half my salary, I'm going to give it to you, can you invest it, can you create a portfolio that I can trust in? And that is a big part of things to come, I think.
So do you think this is a good pitch that the FX brokers are doing to try and win sports professionals as clients? Because if they don't know much about financial markets, they'll choose people like yourself. Has that been your aim and objective, Jan?
No, that is not.
Wouldn't you mind having Rooney as a customer?
Yeah, of course, I would like to have him.
Sure.
And we have good tools. We have multi-asset robo-advisor solutions, which allows diversifies investment. No, but clearly the sponsorship is not there for this. The main ambition is really to create, for in our case, the awareness, the consideration in our target markets, which is Asia, the Middle East, and to activate it there. So this is the main objective.
I think that the gaming was there before the FX and before the binary. We're seeing more, I think, Forex in this industry. I didn't yet. No, there are a few large binary option brokers that also have these sponsorships. But what you do see, I believe that what I heard here, the idea of trust and the brand awareness is the most critical issues here. And I also want to say, part of my experience with dealing with this type of sponsorships is that a very important section that is tend to be left alone is the idea of the section. It's normally the last section in the contract, or one before the last is the dispute resolution scheme. And many contracts state that any dispute between the parties will be solved in, let's say, in the courts of London, under UK law, which will be final and binding and everything. And what I saw is that even if there is this type of section, most of these incidents are closed between closed doors under alternative dispute resolutions and not in normal courts. And I recommend to put it before even signing this type of contract, to make sure that in these type of contracts, all of these disputes will be governed by alternative dispute resolutions, by arbitration, by mediation. There are a set of rules called the ICC rules, governed by the International Chamber of Commerce, and there is similar in the United States, the JAMS, and all of these disputes can be on lots of money, and because all our public figures, there is a huge interest, I believe, of both parties to keep it behind closed doors. And if you know that from the start there is a section in the contract stating that neither party is able to submit this dispute to the court of domicile, that's a legal language, it's much more easier to close things if someone bites someone or does a sexual harassment or deteriorates, you know. That happens, mates. That happens, whether in golf or in football, yeah.
Sometimes at the same time, right?
At the same time, exactly.
It's quite educational having you, Tal. You should join us. So, Mike, will you be taking any consultation on any disputes or anything? Because we've got a perfect
I think I'm going to stay out of that conversation. No. No.
Yeah. Jan, have you got any interesting things planned or have you done anything with the Manchester United deal? I know usually with Man United they don't have an individual player when you do the player appearances. You have to choose 3. So have you guys done anything with that?
Yes, we always use 3 because we have to. So we did the foot golf, which is exclusive content that we shared on social media and was quite well received in the press. Also, we created a huge shoot, over 4 million views on that. So this kind of activities, I think it's an important part of the strategy, of the activation strategy, in combination with then when Barclay is out of the Premier League, then hopefully having more visibility, also Digiboard and this kind of stuff, which are also important. It's really, I think, the combination of, on the one side, the traditional passive visibility, and then to activate it with good, relevant, creative content, which then drives the people to the website, and that's where we want to catch them, where they want to sign up, and then we want to push them through the demo account and further.
Do you always pick the 3 players you want, or do the club rotate the 3 players? Because that's always a thing from a player's point of view. Do you just want the big players, or because that's where players can get invested, because if you're using them, and then their brand expands, and it's about sharing, but that's not what you want. You just want Rooney.
It's a good question, and then it depends on the markets that you would like to activate. So depending on the market, it's better to work with that player or another. So we have a wish list, and then we talk together, and sometimes, yes, it's possible, sometimes it's not. The agendas are very busy, as you know, so not everything is possible, but the club is there to find solutions.
And how do you
The club will always have a final say on it, because if a player gets injured right before, and this is always difficult, and you may have experienced it, Jan, if you plan for a certain player to be there because you're going to do some unique content that's targeting, I don't know, let's say Japan when Kagawa was there, you know, and then you plan for that, and Kagawa gets an injury in training right before he comes to do your player appearance, it can be fairly difficult for a sponsor because he just won't turn up. Because understandably, the club's priority is always the football context first, and then their commercial partners. So it's always it's a difficult one on picking players and clubs being able to make sure they share everyone across their partners. And obviously, you know, the one star can't do every commercial appearance because, you know, he'll get tired and bored and annoyed and, you know, throw his toys out the pram sometimes.
And how useful do you think social media has been? So while you're looking at the players, you probably check how many followers they have or how many likes and stuff.
Yes, absolutely. This is one additional criteria which is important. And then, you know, some players are more likely to share it, others maybe less. So this plays a role in the wish list that we have.
Yeah. And Ryan, how do you view sort of social media for your own individual brand? I mean, you've got quite a few followers on there. Are you quite active on there? And
Yes, definitely. For regarding Silicon Markets, is something that we're going to utilise in a very aggressive manner. But I think, like the fellas reiterated earlier, it's about how you activate it with the individual and stuff. So we're very cautious of that, and but we're also looking forward to it, because I think Lee touched on it earlier. It's about actually, Jan said about the brand awareness is fantastic from it too. It's an extended avenue on top of the affiliation with the team. And Lee come with the shared point of appeal, I think. And that's one thing that it can really open doors to, which is if a fan really has a strong affiliation with this player, the fans really idolise these players, you know. So in terms of client acquisition, it's kind of like if you was to meet a stranger on the street, you wouldn't give him 2 seconds. But if you was introduced via a friend, you naturally give that person more time. So I think them aspects can come out in social media.
So we're going to open up the floor, so we can take some sports sponsorship related or general non-sensitive questions, please.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Remember, guys, keep tweeting. There's 2 people in this panel who have the same birthday. If you get that right, you will get some sort of a prize.
Good afternoon. This is Julian Elliott from Goldeye. What I'd like to ask the panel is, the premise for an FX brokerage to go and sponsor a club or a team would surely be to tap into the pool of sports betting. So with that in mind, where the end user has a lot of information, a lot of knowledge about sports, whether it's rugby or football, how would you convert those people into becoming attracted to FX trading or spread betting or something like that?
I think, Mike, you spoke about something earlier about winning. You know, that's why you like the trading. I think that's
yeah, but that's from a sports person side of it. The fact that I don't play anymore professionally. Obviously, the thing that someone always asks you, oh, do you miss it? And it's, well, I don't actually miss the sport. You miss the feeling of winning. So, you know, doing a good trade, doing a good, having a good punt on a game, you get that feeling of winning. Obviously, like in rugby, when you have a bad game, you forget about it. When you do a bad trade, you forget about it, and you always. And it's that feeling that is what you sort of after. I think in terms of fans and what you're talking about is a knowledge-based thing. Like I would say, I know quite a bit about rugby, so my chances of actually doing well if I had a punt on rugby is better. Now, how are you going to transfer that across to FX? I think is what you were getting at. And I think again, I'll go back to UFX. What they do is you have someone on the end of the line, your own personal sort of assistant, trading assistant that you can ring and you can speak to and you can communicate with. And I think that having that sort of guide, because ultimately if they're leveraging you up as well, they want you to make good trades all the time. So the idea of they can help you, you can talk through what you want to do, they can figure out, they can try and bespoke, help you and call you with what they might think that you'll be interested in how they think it'll move in the way that you want it to be moved. And that's what I think you're going to get from the FX. So you're probably going to get more than what a bookie will give you, because ultimately the bookie is relying on your knowledge, whereas you can rely on other people, professionals who are working in that market, if you have that outlet of being able to phone someone. So I think in terms of for the average fan that you're hoping to bring in this new market that you're hoping to bring in, there is more scope for them to do better off it, because you will have those guys to advise you, and you will have more people who just actually want you to make money, whereas the bookies just want to take your money, you know? So I think it'll work better.
Have you guys looked at sort of the Man United fan base as a client base, and how are you looking to target that?
Yeah, so this is one of the challenges. The Man United fan base is very huge, huger than the people who trade the FX. So actually, and how do you create interest for these fans? So to go on your website, and then from your website, you really have to master the customer journey, providing the relevant information, try to raise their attention so that they get interest of the FX, educational content, this kind of stuff. So it's really step by step. You cannot be too aggressive directly, because otherwise you have a bounce rate which is very high. So it really has to be well thought through. We're still in the process of figuring it out, what's the best customer journey, and to get it there. So it's not an easy one, but it's learning by doing and getting better and better, and this is the ultimate objective.
Perfect. Any other questions, please? Yes, Glenn.
Hello. I'm just wondering if the panel had any ideas on a sports personality considering reputational damage by associating themselves with a firm that potentially may be toxic, so it might damage their reputation. Do they do due diligence on the brokers to make sure they're okay? I mean, I know Ryan's with Silicon Markets, which is a breath of fresh air in our industry, so it's not a problem for him. But is that a consideration?
Anyone you want to answer this question in particular? No, I was joking, because I'm sure Tal was eager to get on.
Yeah,
no,
Adil.
I'm sure, Michael. Well, this due diligence is, as I said before, it goes both ways. But sometimes you do not have enough information. If we take like Capital World Markets, CWM, 2 years ago they were here in Forex, then it was called Forex Magnates Summit. I remember Adil was there as well, also moderating another panel, obviously not this one. And it was 2 years ago. It was in Godliman Street, 10 Godliman Street, not far from here, in St. Paul. And I remember being there in the crowd, and the guy from Algo Charge came to me. There's a new guy here. His name is Anthony Constantino, and he's getting up. He's new to the business, and he's setting up his own brokerage. So at that day, 2 years ago, he signed with the platform provider and with the PSP and with the law firm and with the marketing and did everything. And a few months afterwards, he signed with Chelsea. Imagine, Chelsea as his sponsorship. And obviously, when Chelsea came and checked, you know, it's not something that a club can know. If you Google about this guy, you see that, yeah, he comes from a wealthy family, and there's nothing wrong about anyone, not about him or not anyone. And I will remind again, all these issues about CWM, it's still allegations. You know, the allegations is that they made a Ponzi scheme, and this thing can happen. I hope that it won't happen anymore, but these things can happen. At the end of the day, a club can't know, but a club can check. And sometimes there are warning notices that a club can see. You know, sometimes if the office is too flashy, and if you're only operating your business and you have a big office in Heron Tower, you know, not anyone, not a startup business doesn't necessarily have to have these type of offices, but you can sometimes find some warning notices as a club to know, yes, with these guys we do not want to do business, but sometimes it's too late, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's always an interesting question, because clubs and teams and athletes have to protect their image and their brand as much as possible. And when you do a sponsorship or partnership, you're you're saying that partner shares the same amount of values as you, and therefore you want to take some steps to ensure that they actually do share the same values as you. But the back end of it all, and I think, you know, to Tal's point is they can only go so far, right? And we have a regulatory infrastructure and a regulatory framework in the UK and in other countries that is designed to give licenses to reputable businesses, and they don't give licenses to non-reputable businesses. And clubs and athletes have to put some level of trust in the regulatory framework. And when a brand comes to you and they have the funds for a sponsorship and they have the licenses in place, then clubs aren't set up and athletes aren't set up to do due diligence to a degree of starting to uncover fraud in the business, right? They can only go so far. And Tal's right, there are certain warning signs, and I think clubs and athletes do have a degree of responsibility to ask for the right paperwork, to understand the ownership structure, to go as far as possible within the parameters of what's acceptable to ask for as possible to protect their brand. But there is always going to be a risk factor attached, and it doesn't matter whether it's the FX industry or any other industry. The clubs can only and athletes can only go so far in that due diligence question.
Yeah, but you can speak to the professionals like finance magnates, and they will
absolutely.
immediately say you what are the trusted and reputable brokers and whatnot.
Whose responsibility is it lies? Because in the legal case, if it goes anything to court, you're not going to ask a news publication or a friend or someone.
Finance magnates is not liable for this kind of stuff, and there's also a directory of finance magnates with trusted brokers, but again, it's all based on knowledge which is public, and it's limited liability to a certain extent. No one will come to finance magnates or to Erez or to anyone and say, listen, you wrote about someone that he's that perfect, and a month afterwards, he screwed the client. It's not like that.
It should be done by the firm or the club.
It should be done by the club. And again, as I said and mentioned here earlier by all the members of the panel, it's all limited by a certain extent. So you need to see the warning notices. You need to ask the street people. You need to say, listen, which is the service provider? Which is the platform? Did they sign with a reputable platform?
But you see, Tal, from the FX industry
right.
this. Let's say Mr. Tyndall here, who's not from the space.
I would hire a lawyer like Tal, and it would be Tal's fault, yeah? So that's what I'm paying him to do, right? No? That's what I'm paying Tal for.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
if it goes wrong, I'm having a little knock on Tal's door and I'm having a little word.
Right?
Yeah.
And listen, risk goes both ways, right? Because brands partner with clubs and athletes, and they've got a risk of underperformance, or they've got a risk of clubs or athletes getting involved in certain negative PR activity. And you look at and everything's only allegations, right? But you look at FIFA's brand now and how much they're struggling. So there's risks on both sides of the fence, and you can go. You have to do your duty of care to go as far as possible to uncover that, but it's not infallible. And there's always going to be mistakes, and there's always going to be issues, and some of them are just out of the hands of brands, and they're out of the hands of the rights holders.
That's perfect. So we're going to come to a close now. Just get a couple of last thoughts from the panel. Next World Cup, Mike, Japan, will they win it on the home territory?
Well, I think if you look at... Well, yeah.
Should someone sponsor the Japanese? Maybe you can get the deal.
I think, if you look at Japan now, they're going into they're going to get a super contract for a super team, so they're going to be now playing against the best of the Southern Hemisphere. Argentina are also going into that, so I think you're going to see a massive growth in Japanese and Argentinian rugby. They're just going to get better. So, that game that they beat South Africa, 32 million people watched it in Japan alone. So if they can then get embraced within that and keep that game growing and do that, it's going to be an amazing event in Japan, and they're going to think that they're the first team in World Cup history not to qualify through their group winning 3 games. So they're going to go away a bit gutted that they're not in a quarter-final. So they'll be looking for at least quarter-finals next time and even push it even further. And I think that's why it's going to be so interesting. Everyone was shocked by how close the margins have got against the so-called lesser teams. And I think that's just going to get closer and closer every 4 years now. So we'll see.
And Ryan, in terms of, you mentioned silicon markets trying to disrupt, create some technological hype. Where do you see this FX market moving in the next couple of years?
I think Jan touched on the point with Barclays moving away from the Premier League opens up, all sorts of avenues and room for exploration within the industry. So I think it can only mean a beneficial thing, and with the latest technologies that most brokerages are vying for and striving towards, it can only mean a better experience for the retail customer.
Is there any club you guys might be sponsoring, shirt sponsor anywhere?
Who knows, who knows.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks very much to our esteemed panelists, to the audience. I think it's been a great discussion. Like I said, please keep tweeting, and thanks for listening. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.